Hey, team players, and welcome back, man. I so excited for today. At Local Football Flavor, we're all about using the best information to be able to correlate into you guys getting the best returns for your value. The way that we go about doing this is unique to any other source as far as how we do our predictions for making money in the future. The way that we go about in doing this is we look at all of the bets, people actually putting their money on the table. And this time of the year, it's only professionals putting it. So we're not tainted by the ESPN herd that just follows stupidity. We're actually using intelligent, accurate bets to culminate our numbers. And after 2 weeks of preseason and the beginning of injury reports trickling in, our lists are so sharp, and I am so excited for this. And Bob, like I said, I am so excited for what we're about to bring to the people today. And for if you're doing your, whether it's a redraft or a best ball, this is going to be set up for great information. We're going to be doing Underdog's Best Ball today in both of our drafts that we're doing, one in this episode and one in the next. The only real difference that you might have with Underdog versus your home redraft league is this. Best Ball league, the best player plays, so I never have to worry about setting a lineup. And the second thing is that it's a half PPR. Aside from that, it's as straightforward as your home league.
So the other things that there's some variation to. Hey, George, how's it going? The other, feel free to put your comment in and we'll answer all questions, George.
Absolutely.
So the other thing to think about too, Joe, is that in best ball, you're going to see quarterbacks go relatively higher than in your redraft leagues because typically speaking, when you're looking at quarterbacks in best ball, you want to get a combination of at least three quarterbacks. So you're going to start seeing those mid quarterbacks kind of move up the board a little bit more. But when we look at redraft leagues, a lot of players and a lot of people who are managing teams are usually, if they get one of those high quarterbacks, they're usually not taking another one. So, if I'm getting Lamar Jackson in the 5th, 6th round in a redraft league, I'm not thinking about taking Matt Stafford or Brock Purdy later. But if I am in a best ball league, I am thinking of something like that. So, George, feel free to ask all the questions that you have. We're going to be pulling up a draft right now and talking through our lists and talking through a couple of talking points whenever it comes up in the draft as well. And
so with that being said, Bob, why don't you get ready here because we are about to be told our draft position. We're going to be number 4 on the board. The draft starts in 1 minute, so let us do a little cleaning up on our side, and we will be with you here on the other side with our draft ready to go.
Welcome to Local Football Flavor, connecting the fan bases of the NFL.
Yeah, so George, where I fall at under that discussion for non PPR leagues, especially when we're talking just about standard leagues, I think it's smart, and I think that you'll see in your draft that a running back start in a standard league is a really good way to collect a lot of volume on your team. Sure. And it's also a good way to solidify at least that position rank because, as Joe stated a couple weeks back, one of the important things to know is that when we go into a standard league, running backs, and this is how leagues used to be like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago when we were first doing everything, is, very touchdown dominant, very, points for every 10 yards, maybe a point for every yard or whatever, but usually a point for every 10 yards. And in standard leagues like that, running backs, and you can look at comparisons of draft boards from, this year versus 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Bob, not to cut you off. Do you want a Ma or Brees?
Brees. And you go and you look at the rankings and you'll see side by side that out of, all the drafts now, you might see 7 wide receivers, but back then you'll see 10 running backs. So I advocate very strongly in standard leagues, depending on your draft position, to go running back. As it goes to, should you try to get a top quarterback and a top tight end, I absolutely, if I'm sitting there at pick number 5 or pick number 6, you might not be able to go like a heavy running back, but you'll still be able to get probably like a, if it's a 12-team league, standard league, I still see you being able to get a guy like ETN in that second round, Pacheco in that second round. As it goes to quarterbacks in standard leagues, the rushing quarterback definitely holds more sway. Definitely, absolutely holds more sway. So a guy like Hurts and Lamar, and even Josh Allen there too, I think is really smart when it comes to that. When it comes to wide receivers in standard leagues, because wide receiver, and that's why I said depending on where you're at, because a guy like CeeDee Lamb and a guy like Tyreek Hill still have a lot of value in standard leagues. Amon-Ra as well. Any wide receiver that is capable of scoring 9-10 touchdowns in a given year has value in the first round of a standard league. Absolutely. So it really depends upon your positioning there. You saw a lot of the middle rounds where there's a lot of wide receiver value. Yeah. There's a ton of wide receiver value in standard
Yes,
leagues.
there is. In the middle of this draft, there's more receiver value, I believe, in the middle than the top, and that's what the rankings are telling us. When you look at our drafts in particular here, you see us do a lot of running backs early because there's more value in the backs early. Because a lot of these guys, which we're really going to hit on the next episode, this episode's about love. The one at 5 is going to be about shade. It's going to be a lot about early receivers because a lot of these guys that keep going earlier just aren't going to be able to back it up and produce on the back end. Well, so Bob, one of the players that I'm going to propose here really shot up after we did our second preseason updates after the second preseason game and we got the new spreads in. And that's the guy that was on the board I'm going to be taking here. And he is. It's going to be another running back. Has absolutely shot up our boards. Not necessarily a super surprise, but the Rams are projected to score a whole lot more points. And with Puka Nakua's injury, it's leaning that it's going to go to the two big dogs. Williams and Kupp are going to be the beneficiaries of that. So, George, I was trying to get both of them. Obviously, we're not going to be able to do that in this particular draft, but that's something I wanted to point out. Kareem has really jumped over the board and has categorically put him ahead of players like Taylor and Barkley. And oh, by the way, Gibbs got hurt. Gibbs is not going to be at full strength for the first half of this year, and we have downgraded him out of first 3-round worthiness.
Hey, Darkside, welcome back.
This being said, Bob, Henry's still a dog. I think we're taking him, and we're just done with running back for a while.
Yeah, I don't like this start.
I know you never do.
I do.
Our next receiving grouping, we all can get late for all the quality that they're at.
So,
with the exception of Devontae Adams.
Welcome back. We did go triple running back here, which is definitely something that's not what you see in Underdog a lot. Nope. But what Joe has just stated is that we're going to be hammering the running back or the wide receivers very soon. And one of the reasons why we're doing that is that there is, especially this year, I think in best ball particularly, there's a couple of, dark side. I'm not a fan of triple running back, but it's something unique to see. And these three running backs definitely have a lot of potential to really hammer it home in terms of touchdowns. But when we look at wide receivers here, we're going to be going after and targeting guys, looking at Xavier Worthy, looking at Rashee Rice, looking at Brian Thomas, looking at guys like Shakir, Coleman, all players that have some upswing potential. And if they do hit, we will be in a really good position because, looking at it, the Jamar, Nico, Devontae Adams team is phenomenal. That is a really great start, especially in what we're looking at in underdogs here. And we're probably not going to be looking at another running back probably until round 9 or 10, if that.
At least.
If that. So this team isn't going to have the Mosterts. It's not going to have the Mosses. We might get Tajay.
It might have Moss.
We might get Tajay Spears in the 9th, 10th round. But what we're looking at here is definitely some wide receiver love. And we're going to be hammering those wide receivers. We're going to be
with one glaring exception. If somehow Josh Allen's still on the board, we're going to take Josh Allen.
Yeah. But when we look at on a weekly basis here, the T. Higginses of the world are still going to be there. Although when you look at it, they're not an optimal pick, but there's still an upswing potential to get 8 to 10 touchdowns over 1,000 yards from them as well. And when you start looking at running backs as you go down the board, you have the likes of, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, who are going to perform how they normally do. And there's going to be just as much question marks in those running back rooms as well. And we're not saying that all three of the running backs we drafted are perfect, but it definitely gives us a really good chance.
We're saying it gives us a significant competitive advantage because here's the thing. You got to know where your draft board lies. Yeah. We have 3 top 10 receivers that we're going to be able to get in the mid rounds that people are sleeping on, which gives us a ton of flexibility to really go in different molds. And by the way, different molds are how you win in best ball leagues. So I've already outlined our picks, knowing that I'll be supposedly reaching on people by taking them ahead of our ADP. I have the pick already selected for the 5th round, 6th round, and 7th round. And I think we go monster quarterback here right now and just basically solidify this thing up front, knowing that no one else is going to be reaching on reaching, which isn't really reaching when you know they're the best players. So Bob, that's my argument. I think we should go with one of the premier, ideally Lamar, quarterbacks with this next pick.
If he's there, yeah, but I would like to stack him with Zay, but I don't really like Zay as like the first wide receiver on the team. But
no. I'm not even worried. We'll be able to get Likely on the back end, who is one of these guys who's kind of shot up our board anyway.
To the point that Dark Side mentioned here, for everybody watching, there's a comment here from Dark Side that states, is Kenneth Walker or Josh Jacobs have the same or similar upside as Henry? And I could definitely see a player like Walker having a week-to-week upside that could come to match something like Henry. However, looking at the construction of the Baltimore Ravens, we have to kind of look at this wide receiver situation and how they move the ball downfield. You're moving the ball downfield on big chunk plays, or you're moving the ball downfield through Mark Andrews, or you're moving the ball downfield like a little bit at a time, and through Zay Flowers or Lamar Jackson running the ball. And what we're looking at with Derrick Henry here in the 3rd round is more of that potential touchdown upside. And it's not that we're chasing touchdowns in there, but the way that Baltimore performs and the way that Baltimore plays, it does feel and it does lend itself to the fact that Derrick Henry has a good chance to score upwards of 13 touchdowns in the given year. And having him as a 3rd running back or as a running back 2 or even an RB1, you are playing kind of like that, here we're only going to start 2 running backs, but also a flex position. So if we can flex Henry on a week where he has an upside of 2-3 touchdowns, great. I don't think that Walker has that kind of upside. I think he does have a lot of.
And the other thing you need to recognize that in best ball historically, the best weeks a running back's the flex for your optimally designed teams. So it's something that most people don't really consider, and it's because running backs are more consistent. But to answer your question about specifically Henry or the rest of it, we have Henry as the number 4 running back. Now, granted, until this last update of the spreads, he was our number 2 running back basically all of the offseason. And this guy here has jumped up to be our number 1 tight end, and we're getting him 4th overall. And you look at this, we get the guy who's valued as the 1st, and we're taking him here. So the George Kittle is one of these guys that in San Francisco, the betting market just says they're going to score, and they're going to score, and they're going to score. And Kittle's primed to really take off with it. It's also to be noted that Laporte is projected to have a step back, and so is Kelsey, that there's not really a spread between the top 5 anymore. But Kittle is still the top of it.
And to speak on Kittle for a little bit, I want to get to Kittle in a moment, but I want to touch on Josh Jacobs. Is the big concern for me in terms of Josh Jacobs is not is the team going to be able to score? is that there's a greater amount of weapons in Green Bay that will have the chance to score in Green Bay. And I think with Jacobs, one of the things that he struggled with is optimally using his skills and to be efficient, right? He is one of the least efficient runners in the NFL and needs a lot of consistent volume. And I think that the way that we're looking at the Packers overall is Marshawn Lloyd is hurt, but again, they still have AJ Dillon. Marshawn Lloyd will be back. And one of the things for Aaron Jones over his career there last year, injured with 142 touches in terms of just running touches, not in terms of carries and not targets. The year before that, 213. The year before that, 171. The year before that, 201. And Josh Jacobs, in his best year, needed a lot of carries to get there. And that was behind a Raiders line that wasn't actually terrible. So, yeah.
Well, so not actually terrible, but kind of terrible.
Well, yeah.
The other issue with Jacobs is his injury. He's not fully healed yet. But by all the accounts, it's going to take really till mid-September. But that's week 3. So
I agree with you, Dark Side, on that.
Jacobs has risk with him. There's just no way around that. Hey, Bob, feel free to throw the comments up on the screen as well if you want.
They I don't know if they're gonna appear in the middle or cover us up. Yeah, they're gonna cover us up.
I'm okay with being covered up. I'm not that pretty.
But anyway, what I was saying is in terms of but I'm saying more towards when he had his best year. When he was in 2022. In 2022, he had 12 touchdowns, 1,600 yards, 340 carries. When he only had, and this is just an example, when Jacobs only had 217 carries, he only had 872 yards. So I get it. I don't mind taking him if I went wide receiver heavy here. Do I mind taking him in a round like this? No, I don't. But I absolutely wouldn't take him any higher than, the 5th round if I were to target someone like Josh Jacobs.
So, Bob, this is going to be our first rookie receiver that we're in love with.
How's it going? Welcome back.
Jumping up our board like crazy. He's jumped up to receiver number 6 for us. Mm-hmm. Right now, Underdog has him as receiver 44, and that's Coleman out of Buffalo. He's in a situation where A, they just had a receiver go out for the year. But B, Buffalo's still projected to score this year. Mm-hmm. And if anyone's going to be able to pick up the load and do it, it's going to have to be Coleman and Kincaid. And the fact that you can get such a high-powered premium option whenever, again, it's been said this way forever, but eventually it's going to happen. Allen's going to start running less and start taking checkdowns. Coleman's a fantastic snag.
One of the things about Keon Coleman that is a knock, however, is that he's been struggling getting separation in camp. When it comes to something like that, I think that that's something that the coaching staff could teach him ways to get around it. And I think that Josh Allen will be able to help him with that. I also like Shakir a little bit later. So I'm not surprised at the Coleman pick. I do think it's a valuable pick. I would have loved if Jayden Reed came back around.
Would have loved that too, but can't control everything. So, it would have been Reed, by the way. But,
how are we liking Neighbors, Nino? Neighbors we're not a fan of at his price. When we look at just what happened in preseason so far. Danny Dimes, we have been later in the draft going after mid-range, like a late stack, like Danny Dimes and Wan'Dale Robinson, because there is a little bit of value there. But when it comes to Neighbors, at least, is that, Danny Dimes, and I said this last week, is if you believe in Danny Dimes, then there's no reason to not select Neighbors, say in the 4th round, 5th round as a 3rd, 4th wide receiver. If you're going wide receiver, he has the skill set to succeed in the NFL. However, when a rookie wide receiver is tied to a quarterback that's coming off of injury and there's not really, not a lot of time to establish connection. You're going to probably start to see Neighbors play a little bit, get better games towards the middle half of the season. But then, as some rookies do, they tend to kind of like go back down.
Mhm.
Yeah. And Keon Coleman, for that matter too, worries me a little bit. We do have him ranked high in our rankings, and I do trust the rankings at this point. But
Well, let me put in a further
Hold on.
point about the difference between Coleman being a rookie and Neighbors. The fundamental difference is this: is that Buffalo's projected to score essentially a touchdown more per game. And that extra volume, both in terms of yardage and points, the Giants just can't fight with the Bills. I mean, there's just no way around it. So everything on the Giants as a result is lower grade, 1-on-1, 2-on-2, etc., than it is with a high power team. It's why you see them going at the end of the world late, because they ain't gonna score.
Yeah. So where I land on that is like I'm comfortable taking Wan'Dale Robinson, Daniel Jones late, even though Daniel Jones played like garbage in the preseason so far in the game that he played. I'm okay taking them late because I'm not spending a lot of capital to do that. And when you go and look at Daniel Jones's history so far back from 2022, 2021, 472 attempts, 361 attempts, 448 attempts, and 317 completions, 232 completions. The guy has never thrown a multi-touchdown game. And when you look at that and you say, I want to invest in a draft resource in the third or fourth round that doesn't have the chance to get a multi-touchdown game. And that's what you're doing with Malik Neighbors, because Daniel Jones physically has never gone and had a multi-touchdown passing game in his career. So I don't want to invest in Neighbors at that point in time. I think in Dynasty, and I think he's a great addition in Dynasty, because there's most likely that the Giants aren't going to stick with Daniel Jones for the foreseeable future. But for right now, I am just concerned expending that kind of draft capital in Neighbors. Was wondering that just because I got offered Neighbors and Ford for Walker and Palmer. I think, and you can weigh in on this, Georgian dark side as well for Nino here, is I think I'd rather have Walker and Palmer here, because I think that Walker's situation, although Charbonnet is probably going to get a lot more looks this year, I think that Walker's situation as a running back is less problematic. And I think that Josh Palmer's question marks are only about Josh Palmer and not necessarily about it's their quarterback situation. And Herbert has thrown multi-touchdown games in the past. So I would stick tight with that if I were you.
Bob, now we have a moment here diving in our draft.
Walker and Palmer.
Going around our tight turn here, being the fourth pick at 8 and 9, I'm proposing a mini stack here. We have Prescott rated as the third best quarterback in the league. And we can get him and Cooks very comfortably in this neighborhood and producing a stack. I like that kind of value. You're going to get the third best quarterback.
Honestly,
and
Joe,
where do we have Wood Cooks at?
I would rather have two wide receivers here, Joe. I know.
See, I still think we can get Myers. And looking and see, Bob, I understand you want to do it just because of the way the board looks. I'm looking at where ADP is and where our value is, and that we can come back with it.
And Brian Thomas is still on the
board. Cooks
too.
And Myers and Dak if we do it in this order.
Brian Thomas went. All right, do what you need to do, but I just don't. I'm not fully in on taking Dak soon after taking Lamar. I don't like that.
I get it.
I don't like.
But this is where this is trusting the value of your list.
Yeah,
and knowing that we can get such highly rated receivers here. Now, granted, Jacoby Myers, when we do draft, will be 2 picks before his ADP. So it might be a little bit of a risk on the fourth.
See, I don't think we're gonna get both of them now that you took Dak. That was my.
Oh no, I'm taking Cooks right now at 100, and then at Jacoby Myers' ADP right now is 119.
I don't think he's gonna last. I don't.
We'll see.
I've seen him quietly rise off boards, and almost soon after Dobbs, I often see him getting taken. George. Yeah, I would not let Kenneth Walker go. I think he could easily have a good situation where he lands top 10 in the league by the end of the year. The numbers aren't blessing him right now with a top 10 finish, but I think if everything works out in his favor, that he could definitely do that. That's within his realm of possibility. So George asks, George, you mentioned you were making some mocks and wondering if in the 4 or 5 pick, you should pick Hall, Bijan, Chase, or Jefferson. And I know, and Darkside and Nino, you can kind of chime in on this as well. When it comes to your mock drafting with the 4th or 5th pick, I think I think when you're looking at the wide receiver situation, Chase, by all means, Chase is one of the best wide receivers in the league. And when healthy, he has the opportunity to explode for 30 points. When he's down, his floor is relatively still high. He has a really high floor as well. The only question mark that we have to consider with Chase, and I've taken Chase in a lot of best balls this year as well, just to kind of diversify the portfolio here, is when you look at Chase, is Burrow going to be completely 100% healthy?
Also, is Chase going to be 100% invested? He hasn't even appeared in camp yet. He hasn't practiced at all.
And that's the concern that people have with CD and Chase, holding out and what's going to happen.
Here's the difference between CD and Chase. Chase, granted, the other one's holding out too, has competition in his room. CD doesn't. CD walks in, he's the king of the castle, no questions asked.
But see, that doesn't seem to be a motivating factor for Jamar Chase too. I mean,
no, because Jamar Chase doesn't care if he loses the first 3 game checks if he gets paid like JJ. But me being a fantasy owner, knowing that he could do that, and quite frankly might, CD's accepting that he might become a free agent and break the world to next year.
So,
quite frankly, all 3 of the Cowboys look like they're accepting that. It's weird.
So speaking to it, then and with Jefferson, with Sam Darnold, you look at Sam Darnold, and it similarly for the same reason that I wouldn't take Neighbors early. I would tend to stay away. I would tend to stay away from Jefferson pretty high in the draft as well.
So for comparison, we have Jefferson this year ranked as 11th receiver and Chase as the 13th
for the same reason. But I would definitely go after Hall. I would definitely go after Bijan. I do value those 2 players a lot. I think Hall definitely 100%. If I'm picking a pick in the top 6, if I don't have a chance at CMC and I don't have a chance at CD or Tyreek, I'm definitely shooting for Breece Hall. I also like Amon-Ra as well. So I would order them like that. I would order them Hall, Bijan, Chase, Jefferson. Our numbers talk about Chase in the way that Joe just mentioned, listing him a little bit after Jefferson and Waddle. But there's definitely a pathway in which his numbers could rise above if these numbers are taken into account injuries too in current situations.
Yes, they're taking into account their present injury situation as well as the other people on their roster. So when you look at that, you go, "Oh, that's a big deal."
I could easily see him climbing up the board.
And that's not this, and that's the other part. This is a living, breathing thing that we're going to be doing throughout the year. Our best ball leagues is not necessarily going to be our best ball league rankings right now versus what our week 6 DFS lineups are going to be different.
And they've changed. Our rankings have changed as the dynamic pricing markets have changed and as preseason games have changed as well.
This is the latest update after week 2's preseason with all the injury reports and there. That's why for those of you who've been following us since June, you're seeing us take a little bit different area. We normally didn't go on Kareem early, but we did here because his value jumped. He jumped ahead of Henry. Henry we've been in love with. We still got Henry. So it's something that's amazing in that regards here. So Bob, I appreciate your fear before, but we got Jacoby Myers too.
Yeah, there was a nice string of running back run there. And in Dark Side, George and Nino, you can talk to us a little bit about your feelings here with these running backs in this round. But when we look at all of these backs that just went, I think the one that I'm most excited about that I would usually like to take in a round like this is Tajay Spears.
Yeah.
Um,
And Moss.
Spears, yeah, I'll get to Moss in a moment, but Spears, not really highly ranked in our rankings. He's sitting there as running back 24, with the way that the markets are right now, with Tony Pollard being at running back 25. But this is a running back that prior to preseason games, prior to all this, was ranked fairly high in our top 15, backed up a little bit as people rose, and not necessarily his situation got worse or better, but other people's situations got a little bit better. I think that the youngness of Spears and the
So
way
Bob,
that he
our
plays.
best player on the board right now is his ADP. It's Judy.
Oh, gross. Okay.
I just had to say that because if you would have caught it later, you've been upset. But I had to let you know that up front.
We can talk about Judy in a moment. But yeah, so the Titans' offensive line has gotten better. They want to run the ball, or they want to pass the ball more, and Tajay Spears fits into that profile a lot. And so I'm really in on Tajay Spears. I'm not so in on Pollard just because of the growing concerns about age and efficiency and things like that. But I'm all in on Spears there. And I think that when we look at the other running backs in that situation, people will say Blake Corum is going to take some of Kyron's role. But when you look at the coaching staff, they usually only go roll with one running back. And if Kyron's the guy, then Kyron's the guy. The question is, how many games in a year is Kyron going to be the guy? The guy scored, averaged like 20-some points or close to like 18 points a game when he was playing last year. I will take that all day. And I know that Corum is probably his most likely replacement. He'll probably try to find a paycheck somewhere else. And I'll be okay with that. And to your point here too, Dark Side, before I get to Nino and George's comment here, is I actually like Eckler this year too. The rankings aren't huge on Eckler, but I think that, and I was arguing with somebody about this in terms of on Reddit the other day, is that he's basically free. And
Yes.
and you look at it, he's ranked as our running back 45. He's going really, you look at where he's at. He just went in the 11th round at the end of a big string of running backs, and he's basically free. And if you need a third, fourth running back, there are going to be games in best ball leagues where he's going to be able to get, a couple receptions, touchdown possibly, and maybe 40 yards, through the air. And that's kind of what he was doing a couple years back too. We knew he wasn't a great pure running back, and a lot of his value is in the receiving role. And I think he's gonna do great with that. Last year, I had Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson because I thought the same thing was going to happen. Brian Robinson did get a decent amount of receptions, and I'm okay on Brian Robinson. I think that the Washington running backs are valued fairly right now. I think they're coming off the board at a fair price. And I think that if you're going to buy them, the one that I would want to buy into just based off of sheer potential of situation would be Eckler. I like Robinson, but I think that Eckler's situation, why they brought him in, why would you bring in an aging running back of his nature if you didn't have a plan for him to be successful? You want to win games. You don't want to take cast-offs that are no good. So that's kind of how I fall on Eckler. And to answer George's question and then Nino's here, so George, you were talking about you love Hall this season. I'd rather take him over CMC, but I think I'll get the last pick. So I'm seeking Barkley, Taylor, Gibbs, Kyron from this room. How would you rank them? For me, so I will give you our rankings, and then I'll give you how I would rank them based off of our rankings, and then I'll give you my personal rankings as well based upon just my what I've seen from the past here. So if we're ranking them, obviously. Kyron would be our number one out of that group. It would be Kyron as the number one in that group. Yeah. And then you would have Gibbs as the second in that group, followed by Barkley, or followed by Taylor. Or it would be, scratch that. It'd be Kyron, Taylor, Gibbs, Barkley. So Kyron, Taylor, Gibbs, and then Barkley. And I would rank them fairly similar. I
The
would
thing with
just,
Gibbs is he's getting really dinged by that injury. If
yeah,
it's a hammy, if it looks
yeah.
like he recovers ahead of it, he's the head of it. But it's not probable.
I would rank them right now. Where my personal rankings is I would have it as Kyren, Gibbs, Taylor, and Barkley. I think that a lot of people are. I think a lot of people at the back half of that first round. I don't. I like that turn where you could get two solid running backs of that nature, but I think if I'm at the back half of the first round, I'm actually in a redraft league. I'm really thinking, Kyren and Puka. There's a big touchdown potential for Puka. I also think that it would be fair to assume if you're at the back half of that round that maybe you don't want to sit on Gibbs because in a standard league, maybe you don't see the touchdowns there and wait on Montgomery in a little bit later. So if I'm looking for sheer touchdowns from that group of players, Kyren, I think, has the best potential to score a lot of touchdowns, followed actually by like Taylor. I like Taylor's touchdown potential as well because they have a great offensive line. Gibbs also has the best offensive line in my mind, and I think that it would be fair if he wasn't hurt, he would easily be the number one out of that grouping, just based off of talent and what he's able to do there. And we'll get to that next question in a moment, George. So there is a scare with the injury, but I'm liking Gus with Harbaugh and just having Herbert to get them downfield seems good enough. We're also, when we look at our rankings here, one of the guys that we're also big on is J.K. Dobbins.
Yep, we are drafting him.
J.K. Dobbins is we drafted him there in the 12th round. Incredible value. You're looking at the running backs coming off the board in this round, and you're looking at and asking yourself, if I have a starting running back, which ones are going to do great? So you look, Ty Chandler, if Aaron Jones goes down, Ty Chandler has a pathway to be successful. However, the Vikings tend to not, in the last couple of years, not run it that much. You look at Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard will be good at the beginning of the season. Jonathan Brooks should carry on at the late end of the season. So Chuba, if you're in redraft, it's fair. Okay, you take Chuba. But in best ball, I'm not sure what you're going for with Chuba there in best ball. Jaleel McLaughlin has been getting a lot of coach speak that is going to be like, he's the next guy. Then you hear the next day, Javonte Williams is having a great day. So, we were taking Jaleel McLaughlin in a lot of our earlier best ball drafts, but we've been kind of pulling that back a little bit for us right there. Guys like Tyler Algier and Zach Charbonnet both have pathways to be successful if the starting running back goes down. Now, when you look at the running backs, all the running backs in this room, how many of them have gone down? Well, Gus Edwards has gone down before. J.K. Dobbins has gone down before. We don't know if J.K. Dobbins is going to be anything, but in best ball, if he is a thing, we've got him here in the 12th round. And, Zeke is another one of those things. Zeke, you constantly see the video where Zeke got hit in the dick by one of the machines and he's exhausted. Yeah, he's getting large. He's exhausted. But he's been like that for a couple years now. And, you're taking him in the 12th round in the off chance that he ends up blowing up and having, 700 yards and 10 touchdowns for Dallas, which is totally in the realm of his possibilities. So that's kind of where I fall there. I think that Braylon Allen and Ray Davis are definitely decent enough handcuffs, but unless something catastrophic happens to Brees or something catastrophic happens to James Cook, I'm not as high as other content creators on Ray Davis because I do think that James Cook is a very good football player. So, that's kind of, I think right now I don't see the value in them in the round that they're in. I would rather have a guy like Michael Wilson, like Joe picked for us, where, a wide receiver on a team that definitely has the chance to move the ball this year. Also love Greg Dortch. I'm a Dortch man. A couple content creators are catching on to Dortch recently as a slot machine. Definitely in on Dortch. That's just kind of how I feel. Kate Otten,
You on every time I pick him, Bob. Every time.
I was in on him. So I was in on him a little while ago, but I'm I am more in on Tyler Conklin right now based off the situation than I am on Kate Otten.
Well, we have
Kind of
Otten at
my
number
own.
15. He's just a run-of-the-mill guy.
I know.
Conklin, we have at 18. So here's why I'm on Otten instead of Conklin personally, aside from the fact that our numbers say that. I don't think Rodgers is going to stay healthy. I just don't. And when you look at that and say, all right, well, we
Baker might
lost
not
Baker.
either.
The risk, I thought we were going to get likely on the comeback there.
Yeah, that's why I was saying it doesn't like you just now. We don't have any.
No, I just have Otten so much higher.
Yeah, but we don't have anybody to pair with Lamar.
That's all right. Man,
So
Lamar's a runner.
It's a dead asset there.
Lamar is never.
No, I'm not saying that.
All right, so just for the record, right now we're hitting the spot where I know who my last 5 guys are. They're ADP. They're going to look stupid, but they're rounding out our team the way it should be built.
Anyway, let's talk about this question here. So, Dark Side, Nino, anybody watching, feel free to join in this discussion as well. In the last round, seeking to draft some of these players: Chase Brown, Jalen Wright, Charbonnet, Trey Benson, Brooks, Corum. Any thoughts of these players? Here's how I like this. So I like Brooks for later in the season. So he's hurt right now. He's probably not going to have a lot of value right now for you. But I think that in the last 5-6 weeks of the season, if you're competitive, that he's going to have a lot of value for you. Jalen Wright is going to get used. McDaniel, when he has an asset, he uses his asset. So no matter how much we like Devin Achane, no matter how much we like Raheem Mostert, no matter how well we think those players are going to do, he is going to use Jalen Wright. Now in redraft, it's going to be specifically hard in a standard redraft league to figure out when that week's going to be. So I would stay away from Wright for that regard. But if one of those 2 running backs were to go down, Wright totally would slot into a Devon Achane style role and probably be very, very, very valuable. Chase Brown, content creators, we've been going back and forth talking about, is it going to be Chase Brown or is it going to be Moss? We at Local Football Flavor believe in Zach Moss. Chase Brown definitely has a skill set that will be valuable to the Bengals, but I don't think that skill set will put him in the end zone a lot. So if we're looking for standard, I'd stick to Zach Moss instead of Chase Brown. Charbonnet, similarly, if they give him the chances, I don't know if that's going to happen. Trey Benson looks, from the last preseason game, he's climbing down ADP boards because he's kind of sitting there and not getting the work that we thought he was going to get. And Connor will go down, but we don't know if Benson is going to be the guy that's the next up. And Corum is who Corum is. If Kyron does go down, Corum is going to feast. And that's what's going to happen, I believe. So if I were to rank these in order of who I would want to take a chance on, I would rank them as Brooks, Corum, then Jalen Wright, then Charbonnet, then Trey Benson, then Chase Brown. And I would stay away from Chubb. When we look at Nick Chubb's right now is kind of market value somewhere in that. He's been falling. So, earlier in the year, he was going in the 8th. He's fallen to, what did he fall to here? 9th, 10th round? I think it was 10th round, Joe.
Who were we looking for?
Chubb.
Chubby Chubb.
Yeah. So he's there in the 11th round. I think that Chubb's too high. Now, there's a good chance that he could come back from an injury, but an injury like that's kind of rough. So I'm all out on Chubb. And to be honest with you, I did draft a best ball team that has both Ford and Chubb on it in the off chance that, it hits. But I don't think you can trust that in a standard redraft league. So I'm more less risk averse in best ball where, I might take a chance on them, but I do think that there's better value out there. I do not like that Burton pick there, Joe.
Tell me why you don't like Burton. He's set up to basically get a year.
I don't like, if you would have asked me last week, 2 weeks ago, I would have said, yeah, I like it. But from what we're seeing is that Burton is not even like from what we have seen in practices and stuff and in games, like he's not even like seeing the field, dude.
Yeah, it might end up being switching over to the slot one, but right now Burton he was drafted to be the replacement for Higgins, and Higgins and Chase aren't there, so I might be a year early on Burton. I admit that.
Yeah, but
but it's also a late pick that is my 7th receiver.
I would have been happier with Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch rather than Jermaine Burton. To be fair,
well, we already have Michael Wilson.
I know, but I would say
those guys weren't options.
I would no. Greg Dortch.
It really comes down to, did I want Wilson or DJ Chark? And I don't think I want DJ Chark ever.
So, here, George, you asked any wide receivers that you like that maybe don't have too much attention. Example: Wicks, Polk, Coleman. As we said, we do like Coleman. I like Shakira. I like Shakir as well from Buffalo. I think that his play style lends itself to some really good chances down the field for Josh Allen. I also think that Coleman, if he can get out of the rookie doldrums, could have a phenomenal season. Brian Thomas is another one of those players that even with Christian Kirk there, there's going to be he's walking into a room with a very solid tight end in Evan Ingram, very solid running back in Travis Etienne, and, playing the role that he's given, I think that he could do really, really well. So I'm looking at him. Like I've told Joe, I also consider Wicks as well. And we've taken Wicks a couple of times in some of our best ball leagues. He is ranked as our 57th wide receiver. DraftKings or Underdog has him as the 55th wide receiver, so right at value. And I think that the value for him is perfectly fine, but he's the 4th wide receiver there right now. So is the opportunity going to increase? Maybe, maybe not. His profile looks really great, but in a standard league, I don't know how much of a role he's going to play. In a redraft that has PPR, yeah, I'd be more willing to take a chance on Wicks. Guys like Polk and Joe can attest to this. I'm one of those drafters that in ambiguous wide receiver situations, I'm willing to take a chance on ambiguous wide receivers late.
Yes. Well, that's basically what Burton is, dude.
Yeah. Well, no, the reason I didn't like the pick was because his situation has changed and seems to have gotten worse, and our numbers did not account for that yet. Anyway,
well, that's true. The usage projection did not. That's not one of the things that changed. It was the team value in the injuries.
So that did not.
But let me ask you this: are you comfortable going in with your only 2 tight ends being Kittle and Otten?
No, I would like Greg Dulcich if he's available. Even though his situation is kind of like interesting. Colby Parkinson, if he hasn't been taken yet, is a guy that I think we've been targeting a lot. I think
he has. He was taken before the Burton pick.
Where was he?
He would have been the Burton pick. But if you want Dulcich, we can throw the Dulcich on there.
Wait, Parkinson hasn't been taken yet. Oh yeah, he has.
Yeah, he was. He was taken
also
16th round.
Also sneaky here. What camp has been.
Dulcich it is.
Also, Joe, Gerald Everett. They seem to have a committee there in Chicago, so he's also a guy that to continue to think about as well. And George, we're going to be going on for another. We're going to be flipping the script and doing another best ball draft. So feel free, if you can, stay around. We'll be racking up another one in a moment on a different live stream, so that we can keep talking and keep discussing.
Keep it coming. That's exactly it.
Do we have any rankings that are ready to publish yet? We have our own personal rankings, and you'd have to talk to Joe here, but we can definitely.
We don't publish them. We have you watch the show for them. That's how we go about them.
We definitely talk about them. We definitely talk about them a lot. So if there's any players that you are specifically interested in, and where we
we won't hold anything back from you.
Yeah, if there's any players that you are curious about where we are ranking them versus where Underdog might be ranking them, we'll definitely share that with you, George. We don't have
it's not to hold back from you. Part of the reason is they're literally changing week to week with the betting lines.
Yeah.
So what we print today won't necessarily be the same as it. We're not like quite frankly, we're not like ESPN that just does them once and then changes 3 players.
And Joe
around
doesn't
for
like
click.
the sort feature as well. So
What do you mean I don't like the sort feature? Every single one of my guys are sorted.
oh, it's just a gentle rib. Just a gentle rib.
All right, here's your Dolch.
Yeah, like I said, Everett, Knox. Knox is also another good one that people aren't talking about too much. Dalton Kincaid.
Oh, I like Knox, yeah.
You know, yeah, cool, George. We'll see you there. Yeah, with Knox, I'm okay with a guy like Knox too. I wasn't okay like earlier in the year, but like usage wise, Dalton Kincaid should see a bump, but that's not like guaranteed. We're all thinking that it's guaranteed by taking him early in the draft, and that just might not happen. So, that's kind of where I feel on the Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid kind of thing. And Dawson Knox, again, is absolutely 1,000% free. So you don't even have to worry about him.
That is. Bob,
yes.
Overall, I really like that. We're not going to be stepping off here until about 10 minutes. I really like this team overall. We look at our rankings and see what we came away with. We came away with the number 2 and the number 3 quarterbacks. We came away with what? Our number 2, 4, and 7 running backs. We came away with the number 1 tight end off our board. We came away with number 6, 15, 19, and 21 receivers. So obviously receivers the weak spot, but we still got the 6th one off our board. So
yeah,
you look at this and say, sure, there are some picks that we went throughout this that people are going to be like, that's crazy. Why would you do that? Well, if you can end up a draft and tell me that you got top 6 at all 4 positions, and for your running back, you got 3 of the top 7, which will be your flex.
Mm-hmm.
This is a team that, and with the sharpness of the numbers, is incredibly competitive. I know that you're upset that we didn't pull Likely, and I agree with you. I'd rather have, considering the fact that Otten and Likely are basically the same ranking between 15 and 19 tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
But I also look at it as Lamar's a running quarterback. We got Henry.
Well, I think what would have made me feel a lot better is, can you go up to the top half of that board there?
This is the top. Oh, I just got to take the thing off. Sorry.
Yeah. So going to the top half of this board here, I think that, by strictly team composition and team makeup here,
it looks weird. I get it.
No. Not that it looks off or anything of that nature. But I think that I would have liked, and I understand where you're coming across, with our rankings and taking the top, the running backs where we did, because we're getting 3 top 6 players.
Yeah.
But I would have liked to take a chance on a guy like DK Metcalf there, or Rashee Rice, where we took Derrick Henry. And here's why. Is that coming back down and around? Can you look up where Zach Moss or Mostert was taken?
Moss was taken. Moss was taken at 111 overall.
111.
Yep.
Okay, can you scroll down so I can see the 11th round picks? Obviously, we made Jacoby and Brandon Cooks. So here's kind of like how I would see it. Do I think Jacoby is a worse player? No, not by a stretch of the imagination. But what I would have liked this team to have comprised of, because if we would have went after Moss, we would have still got somebody within our top 10.
We have Metcalf as the 10th, and had we gotten Moss,
we would have added.
It's a step back from Henry, obviously.
Yeah, but it upgrades that wide receiver situation, because again, I'm not against, by any stretch of the imagination, I'm not against taking rookie wide receivers with some veteran upswing here. But like, it would have precipitated that we didn't have to take Jerry Jeudy. And in that, and while I'm not against Jerry Jeudy, I've come around on Jerry Jeudy in the off season here. I think this team would have been stronger top to bottom, especially knowing that only 2 running backs definitely need to start. Mm-hmm. If we would have locked in DK, can you go up a little bit? if we would have locked in DK, Ladd, and Keon Coleman as our top 3 wide receivers on a week-to-week basis, and then our flex was fighting between Cooks and Moss, I think I'd be comfortable with that because,
I see your argument. I got a lot. Can't kid you. I got so obsessed with Henry so much during this offseason process as he was our number 2 running back for so long. Having him drop there is a little bit remarkable.
And I think
that you're right.
And like, I don't want to
looking back, I think that'd probably be the only thing that really we would have changed. And you see the tangible upgrade. What it upgrades at the end of the day is it strengthens the weakness of receiver.
Mm-hmm. And we went Breece Hall in the first round, and we could have went Amon-Ra. We could have went.
That could be other thing. If we just go Amon instead of Breece, I don't think we have an issue at all.
No, and that's definitely the case. I think that if we would have went Amon, but again, Breece Hall, our rankings have slipped him a little bit down in the rankings a little bit.
Because the Jets in general are going to score less. But
but all of those touchdowns feel like they could come from Breece Hall. So the guy can definitely play ball. So in our next draft,
maybe that'll be our answer moving forward. But next time we have that debate, just Amal wins no matter what.
Yeah, and I think especially, Joe, when we're sitting here at the top half, in the first 5 picks, even though I want to take Breece Hall, and I've played with it too, where I've taken Breece Hall at the 2, or I've taken Breece Hall at the 3 in best ball drafts, just to see how my teams turn out. And I never truly like them. But I also know that.
How don't you like having a team with Breece Hall, man? He's could be the number 1 running back.
Here's the thing. Here's what comes about, though, is I know my team on a week-to-week basis is a very good team. And I know that my team is unique because I know that not many people are taking Breece Hall at the 3, at the 2, at the 4. So whatever I get on the comeback and whatever other I get on the down in the later rounds, I know that my team is going to be relatively unique in comparison, and it's going to be competitively unique.
And that's the part I love about our rankings is that because they are so different and I believe so accurate, I'm going to be getting different lineups every week. And the likelihood of me having a lineup matched with someone else is fairly low. I know there's 200,000 entries in this, and I'm not trying to be super arrogant about this. It's just the reality. We're so much different than ADP. It's pretty crazy. Hey, remember when we were doing these back in June and we were getting Ladd McConkey in the 10th round?
Again, you can't say his name right. If you're going to pick the names,
but I love him.
Pick the names. Stop adding me out. Yeah. When you get Ladd, when we were getting Ladd and Ingram a little bit later, we all knew like the reason for drafting in June is so that you can find those values relative to their closing costs. And you'll hear this from other content creators is that, when you draft, and we can lock into the next one, and we'll bring this up as the
likewise. So perfect. So we're gonna check out here, guys. Click the next video on the channel. If you haven't already done so, click subscribe. It'll make your life a whole lot easier to find us. We'll see you here in the load up in about 3 minutes.
Welcome to Local Football Flavor.